So, I'm Sophie Graine, and my show here at the Paint Spot is from September 29th it started, and it goes until November 7th. So I grew up in Ontario, and I came to Alberta in around 2016. Moved to Fort McMurray, which is what inspired a lot of my art. Love the mountains here, and the boreal forest, and the prairies, and all the different landscapes that there's so much to paint and so much to make art about, really. And I'm self-taught, so I feel like self-taught is a bit of a myth because I've taken lots of workshops and read books and videos and online courses and all kinds of things, but I did not go to art school formally. I had the choice to go to school for science instead of art, and I don't think that was a bad decision because working in science field has taken me to all kinds of amazing places, which also really inspires me. I grew up in Ontario, and we had a 100-kilometer trail up in middle of Ontario. We got to the north, but it's La Cloche Silhouette Trail in Killarney Park. Anyway, I'm sure that Group of 7 painted there. So lots of hiking. I saw the mountains when I was 10 years old, and it was just like, wow, this is so big, and it makes you feel so small and big all at the same time, you know. So to make one of these painted lino cuts, so I can show up the finished product, it looks like that. And so I have this kind of, a lot of artists use linoleum. Then I trace the drawing over in pencil, and then I put it on this block and rub it on. And then what's left is this pencil drawing, and then I carve away all the bits. But then once it's carved, I have a tool called a brayer, which is like a roller, and here I'll have a pile of ink, and I'll roll the ink, and then I'll roll it onto that. And then I'll take my piece of paper, put it on top, and take it off. And that moment is the magic in printmaking. And when new people do it, I love to see their face when they pull off this print and they're like, wow, look at the thing I did, because now it kind of looks like a mess. And when they pull it off and it looks, something more like that without the color, it feels really good. So then I paint them, and you can see this one is partially painted, so I just laid out all the greens and painted those. And then I finish up the print. And it's nice because you can have different variations, like you can make an edition number, like a size, and you can make each one different if you'd like, or make them quite similar if you like. So that's about my printmaking process. Here you can see one of the prints just as it is, a black and white print, and then when I paint it, it looks like that. So I use oil-based ink, and the reason I like them, if you use water-soluble ink, it won't work because as soon as you put your watercolor on top, it won't run. But when you use the oil-based ink, then a few days it dries, and then it kind of almost repels the paint. So as you're adding your watercolor, it doesn't so much sit on top of the print as it goes where it needs to go. It gets absorbed by the paper. And the other thing is about pigments, might be of interest, is choosing transparent pigments is helpful, because if you choose a opaque pigment like a yellow ochre or something, and that's pretty solid, then you'll kind of obscure the black lines. So you want to be thinking about your pigment choice. And sometimes to choose the colors, what I do, I play around with little color studies, so you can kind of see there, and I'll use gouache, or I'll use water-soluble oil paints, which I love. And sometimes I'll do a field study, which can be super simple, and then I'll come back and turn it into a lino cut. I am drawn to sort of the melancholiness of being outside almost, which is a bit weird because they're cheerful in a way, but it's like I feel like somehow there's this poignancy or sadness somehow, even though they're happy scenes. And I don't really know how to explain it, but it's not sadness so much as contemplative, I guess. And I don't have people in my work, and I sometimes have animals, but rarely. It's more about being in a place, you know, one of my hiking experiences, I hiked for 3 weeks by myself in California in the mountains, and you know, when you're pretty young and you're doing that, you're afraid of bears, everything around the corner. It's a big challenge. Just that spirit of being willing to be out there by yourself and confront all those things, I feel like that's somehow in here. You know, I used to read a lot of Sid Marty, Meant for the Mountains, all that romantic sort of Alberta Rocky stuff. And like, I think you can see it here, like campfires and cabins and the rugged ideal of being in nature, like all that stuff, you know, kind of present in work. I get that people want to see paintings of Mount Rundle and the Three Sisters and sort of those iconic landmarks, but I just don't feel like that's for me, and I rather, you know, this like a little marsh in the middle of town in Fort McMurray, like there's a suburb on this side, and for me it's just so beautiful that when you stop there that I hope people appreciate those little moments. It was a little while before I found gouache. Like, I experimented with all the mediums pretty much, and gouache had the ease of watercolor, but the opacity, like, and kind of fun of acrylic or oil or something. You could layer it all, but it's so easy. You could just, you know, throw your paint kits in your backpack or your purse or whatever, and you could go out there and, you know, sit inside your car, or like this one I painted inside the airport. So you can draw from life when you're using that, and you could be a bit lazy because if you let it dry on your brush, it's not the best, but you could clean it up a little while later, and that'll be okay. And you can get some good textures with it too, which I think that's, you know, going back to the oil paintings and why I like those versus why I like the painted lino cuts. The oil paintings let me have so much texture, and it's super fun, and I've always loved those paintings where you walk into a gallery, you walk up super close, and it just dissolves into a bunch of swatches. And then you stand back, and it's this beautiful, hyper-realistic looking scene, but somehow they didn't paint every leaf. And that's something that I aspire to in the oil paintings, and with the gouache, you can kind of do that. You can put a bit of paint on your brush, a little bit dry, and then just like drag it across the surface, and there you go. And you have this magic texture that you somehow didn't plan. I love books in general, so I love sketchbooks as an extension of that. Like I love walking into a bookstore and seeing all the books on the shelf, and having a wall of sketchbooks on the shelf is really nice like that too. You know, there's something a little bit free and experimental, like you can kind of just put some splotches down and that's fine, and you don't have to worry about it. If you don't like it, you can just turn over the page or cover up the page or whatever. And there's also an element of, if you're making art in a sketchbook, you're not thinking, oh, I'm using this expensive canvas and it has to be good. So you can be a little bit more free like that.
I gotta find which things that I want to comment on. So I do lots of different color studies just as a practice, learning how to paint different colors of shadows. Realism is important to me, and trying to achieve that. So I do lots of studies and things, and then I also just sketch whatever when I have a spare moment, do some writing about it, and you know, here's some more colors. And this was the windowsill at my house, and so it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be something fancy in order to be art or a good subject for art. This was drawn from a parking lot, but it was in Arizona. This one here was actually a painting for a lino cut, like a reduction lino cut that I made. And so sometimes I'll plan it in a detailed way like that.
These are reduction prints, which are also lino cut, but different than the painted ones. And for a reduction print, you get one shot. And so at the beginning, you decide on how many you want to make. And then you think, what is my very lightest layer going to be? So in this case, my lightest layer was this yellow and pink kind of in the sky. So I didn't make any cuts in the block at all. I just had the square piece of lino, size, and I put on that ink and made all these prints. Addition of 4, so probably I made 6 and 2 were thrown out because they failed. And then you think, what's my next lightest color gonna be? And then you cut away. So you see here, there's these little bits of yellow peeking out. So that's actually from that first layer, and then the next thing I did was I carved out those little yellow bits. And probably then I printed this like light orange. And I put half it light orange, and then here, like to make this sky gradation, what I did was I mixed up a blue, and I put it on a little bit on the block, and then I wiped it away with like paper towel. And that's what gives you that kind of painterly streaky effect, and it also makes each one a little bit unique. And so at that point, all you've got is like this kind of stripe of this orange, and then this nice sky. And then you keep carving away. So at that point, I would have carved like all the trees, and everywhere where you see the light orange, like I would have carved that away too. I want it to be planned. I want the result to look really good, and so I'm not afraid to take that long time and have it be very methodical. And for this, I love the technical challenge. So reduction lino cut, you think, you have an idea. Can I do it? Wow, like this could be really cool if I can pull this off. How is it gonna look? And once you carve away, there's no going back. Redo it or adjust something here and there. What you've got is what you've got as you go along. And so I love that technical challenge and that intrigue, because as you pull each new layer off, like once you've printed it, you don't know what it's gonna look like. And at first it just doesn't look like much of anything because there's just some random splotches around. And you kind of have to trust the process that at the end you're going to have something that's going to work. That's what I love about this. With the oil paintings, what I love is the amount of texture that you can build up on the surface, where here, it's this very like elegant flat surface, and on the oil paintings it's a bit more rough and textural, and you can get in there with a palette knife. And so they're two different things, but they're both super fun. One here is, if you want to be an artist, you should focus, you should do one thing, that's how people will know you as. And I have that reel happening, but I can never do it. And I've tried and I've thought about this, but the different kinds of work really speak to different parts of me. And there's always been that tension where, the be a responsible person, do a job, all these things, and then, but I just want to run away and like spend 6 months hiking and not, And it's the same with this. It's like the lino cuts are playful and fun, and when I'm carving it away, it's like I can just think and my mind goes free, and painting them is super fun after. And the paintings are more kind of like effort. There's a lot more care and time in a way, and they're more detailed, and they just speak to different parts of me.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.